Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying the muted colors of autumn out in the perennial garden and the landscape, and I'm going to finish up with a few last-minute chores before winter sets in.
I have to get up on the ladder and clean out the gutters, and luckily, here we are. We're the second to last week of November, and it's still pretty decent.
It is. It is decent. We've had a long fall to kind of get things done, so I'm comfortable.
Yeah, you're feeling good about where things are in the yard?
I'm ready for winter.
I've got things I did my mowing. I think we got everything just about cut down. Like I said, just get up on the ladder, go through the gutters, and I'm feeling good about things.
That's great. Hey, remember last podcast we heard from a listener who mentioned and sent a photo of his amaryllis that he planted out in his flower garden? Mm-hmm. And I had never heard of people planting and actually sending me photos of blooming amaryllis out in the flower garden during the summertime. And so I wrote back to him, Mike was his name. I wrote back to him after our discussion and asked, how long of a blooming period did those have? And of course, he indicated, that they'll bloom, the blooms vary a little bit from bulb to bulb, but gosh, I don't know. It looked like in his planting, he must have had, 25 or so big, huge trumpet blossoms. And as he indicated, that was an eye catcher for people driving by. Well, when I asked him, how long of a blooming period did those have? And he said, generally for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. You could probably stagger the bloom a little bit versus on the planting. And he indicated, too, that they have a wonderful mix of pink, some were kind of pink, reddish. And so that's awesome. That inspired me to plant amaryllis bulbs out in the spring so that they're blooming in the middle of summer. I'm going to plant those out where people can see them going by, because those huge trumpet-shaped blossoms in the summertime, those are going to be awesome. And so thank you, Mike, both for listening and for sending those awesome pictures of amaryllis blooming in a summertime flower bed. And now we know you'll get at least a couple of blooms, not a couple of blooms, many blooms, but a couple of weeks of bloom from those. Boy,
you were on the garden tour this summer, and somebody who really wanted to have a showy garden, that would be a good. I don't want to say a trick, but that would be a good feature.
Good conversation piece, that's for sure, because we're used to seeing amaryllis blooming in the wintertime, around Christmas time. Awesome. And to see them blooming like that in middle of summer, I'm going to do it.
Well, if people have questions for you, what's the best way to reach you? Or want to show you something that they've done?
Yes. Send me an email. Photos are always great. Donald.Kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu. And thanks for all those who do write in.
Well, so we talked about amaryllis as kind of blooming around the holidays. One of the other features that I think of when I think of flowers and arrangements at the holidays, I tend to think of, especially at Thanksgiving, like dried arrangements. And so we thought it'd be really fun to bring in Kimberly Hess from Prairie Petals in downtown Fargo to come in and talk. You do more than dried arrangements, but we're going to talk about that today. So Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what Prairie Petals is.
Prairie Petals is a flower shop just waiting to hear what sort of a problem for flower need you have to solve so we can think it up.
So you're a floral fixer.
I am an inventor. I am an engineer, and I engineer flower arrangements, basically, is what happens.
All kinds of flowers?
All kinds. Dried, fresh, tropical, twigs. One of my favorite things was to arrange in the pods of those flycatcher plants that I had set down in moss. So I had filled up that trumpet itself with water and arranged out of it. That was fun. So
you really like coming up with ingenious, really kind of novel ways of presenting maybe some flowers that we've seen otherwise, but in just a different earth surroundings and settings, it sounds like.
Yes, we don't have any patterns in the flower shop, and so every order is a one-of-a-kind thing, and we give you a little interview and ask you some style questions and things, and then we dream it up on the moment.
So how did you get started in what's your gardening, growing background? How did you get started in this?
I grew up in a family where we had a big garden from the get-go. We lived on a double lot in Winslow, Arizona, and we had a big garden. So I had my own little plot. I had to plant parsnips.
Parsnips.
That we could plant whatever we wanted, and I needed to plant something else. Nobody did, so I planted parsnips.
Okay.
And I played in the garden, and I loved it. It was an embedded thing into me. The flowers were not. The flowers came into my life at the request of someone who said, will you grow them for me? I didn't seek it out because I'm an engineer.
Well, what brought you to North Dakota? And was there much of a change in gardening, of course, from Arizona to North Dakota? What brought you here?
Wow, that's a long story. I grew up in Arizona. My mother had moved back to Minnesota, living in Ada. I came here to make a wedding dress to marry a person in Arizona. I was currently managing a McDonald's in San Francisco. I was robbed. Then I was shot at pretty close range and missed me by about an inch or so. And then I didn't want to be there anymore. And so I accepted the marriage proposal of the man that I had left in Arizona. I came to Minnesota to make my wedding dress with my sister, my mother, and my grandmother from Sabika. And due to a set of circumstances, I found myself visiting with someone I'd never, like a one-of-a-kind thing. I was getting married, and so I wasn't looking at it romantically, but I was pretty curious about this one-of-a-kind person. And so when the opportunity came for me to ask him a bunch of questions, I did. And then I was like, oh, okay. Then I went back to San Francisco, finished my job, went to Arizona, got married. And 6 months later, woke up one morning and called my mother. And I said, do you think I could have a job where you are? And she said, yes. I said, okay. Well, I'm going to get divorced. She said, I figured you would. And I said, can you come here in 3 weeks and fly here and we'll drive there together? And she said, yes. So 3 weeks later, I got in a car and I drove here in the worst storm of the year, lost a tie rod not very far from here. So it was a limp in a blizzard.
Oh, wow.
On February the 22nd of 1983. And 2 weeks later, I got George on the phone. And he said, I thought you got married. I said, I did. Then I got divorced. He said, what are you doing here? I said, well, thought I'd try this for a little while. He said, well, what are you doing on Wednesday night? I said, I'm going out with you. How's that?
That's great. Well, you are so talented with flowers. I am happy that events found you here.
Thank you
awesome.
very much.
Yeah. So when did you start? When did Prairie Petals open?
Well, the Prairie Petals opened in 2010.
Okay.
Yep. On NP Avenue in a very small space next to what was then Wasabi.
Okay.
Yep.
And now you're in the Loretta building right on Broadway?
Yes.
Right. So what were you doing before Prairie Petals? Before Prairie Petals maybe became an official brick and mortar business? Were you were doing arrangements and stuff before then too, right?
I started, as I said, I had a cut flower garden as a business because somebody asked me to grow flowers for them. And I was in a position when the Hotel Donaldson opened and I had a vegetable garden for them. They asked me if I'd make arrangements for the hotel. And I said yes, very confidently, because I thought I only had to make one. I had to figure out how to make one. And then in 5 minutes, I had said yes to 18. And then I had a problem. And I'm a pretty confident person, but at that moment, I was not. And sheer terror, I asked somebody to give me a lesson, and she did. And when she was finished, it was a very, what you would expect from a florist. And right then, I remember looking down and thinking, oh, if I could rebuild my engine of my car again right now, or dig a ditch or anything but this. And I looked across it and realized literally I can't speak Greek, which is what it felt like to me. But when they're hauling you down the hallway for surgery, the decision is made. You're there. And I just had to force myself to look around and say, okay. So I started it. She stopped me immediately. I realized I was not going to be able to follow her lesson. And so I just took on down my own road with something. And because I had never arranged flowers, I just had to start spinning it until I had a kind of a gut feeling going. And it was kind of coming to me, and I'm spinning it, and I know that there's something not right about it. And I look across at what I have, and I was like, yes, that's it. I dash over there and I get these 2 little purple allium and I stick them in this spot. And I say, ta-da, and I'm done.
So it's really learning on the fly and just going with kind of your instincts.
That was totally it, completely.
And just seeing something and realizing what kind of works together, that you didn't have the formal training.
It was literally by the seat of my pants. It was a gut feeling within me and nothing more. I don't even know what an arrangement is going to look like when it's done when I start it. None of us do. We start it and it's like it comes washing through us based upon the information we have that we're supposed to do. And we just wait for, if you want to say, the song of it to just come out of us. And there it is. And that's what happens. And for me, I realized after a long time, I had great success because I had no training. I love to solve a problem and think hard. And I like asymmetrical things. So if you're going to stick something way far out over here, you have to invent a way to make it look like it wouldn't fall off the table that way. And it just was the engineering balance of the features of the thing. And then I would say, yep, that's it. It's done.
All right. Let's take a quick little break. When we come back, let's talk more about what you're growing now. And then later, let's talk about some tips for dried flowers.
Sounds great.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
All right, we're back with Kimberly Hess from Prairie Petals this week. We're talking about floral arrangements, which you do great jobs of, and just really eye-catching and really memorable, because your floral arrangements are not like the floral arrangements you're going to find in a grocery store, and that's by design. That you want to do something that's really unique and never been done before and will never be done again.
Pretty much, that's it. Yes.
So how big of an operation? Well, first of all, let's start with the in-store. How big of an operation? How many employees do you have?
6.
Okay. And how big of an operation do you have outside of the store? You must have a garden that you grow.
I have a very large garden, and in 1993, roughly, I planted 178 acres to prairie up at the farm that I used to live at between Halstead and Shelley. And then since I live on the Buffalo River now and I have the lower sides of both of the river, I planted both of those sides to prairie. Only this time, I bore in mind what I would want to pick from it. So I have that, and I have just a very large cut flower garden.
When you said plant to prairie, give us an example for, like, I've never heard that term. Like, what things do you, I'm imagining, I can kind of imagine what it is, things that would be indigenous to our area. And
all of it is, yes.
But so, like, when you plant to prairie, what are some of the things that you do that you've planted there?
Well, the native varieties of purple prairie coneflower.
Okay.
I love purple prairie clover. It's my favorite flower. Like, the list is long. Wild allium and wild sunflowers, and I think there are 15 grasses. There are 32 cultivars altogether in this current 32 acres that I planted in the last year.
There are so many beautiful natural native grasses and wild prairie flowers, like you mentioned. And then also, do you plant some of the, what would you consider maybe more of the tame flowers, like zinnias?
We have
marigolds, those. Do you do a combination of
roughly,
both, or do you tend to more
maybe
natives?
30 or 40 different things in the garden. So several marigolds, dahlias, odd things, Queen Anne's lace, pods, hairy balls. Yes, that is a real thing. Yes. It's endless. Chinese lanterns.
And now, do you have someone, maintaining a large area like that for flower production is no small task. Do you have someone whose job that is to maintain that also? I'm thinking weed control and just, all the things that come along with flower production. Because I know you guys are probably busy in the design shop doing that. Do you have someone that maintains? You're a busy person.
Myself and my shop manager partner, who is like my daughter-like person who happens to also live with me. So it's easy. We get up in the morning, we pick the flowers, or it's not easy, but I mean, we're there together. It is not neat and tidy. It is not picturesque. People say, I want to see your garden. And I'm like, okay, well, mostly we cut all the blooms off of it. So it's not really like a big old blooming thing,
It's not like an English cottage garden.
No. And it looks tough. This year especially, but yard fabric is our friend, and we just didn't get enough of it down. So yep. But it has bright sides, because when a zinnia plant has to work its way up through the bed of weeds that it's trying to fight against, you can get a zinnia 5 feet tall.
So do you produce most of your own rather than buying in some of the flowers?
Originally, when I did flowers at the Hotel Donaldson for the 2 years, I grew it all or dried it all. Then I opened my flower shop, and for the first, it was in July, and I would say it was round about, I know it's going to freeze. I'm going to have to buy flowers that I bought my first commercial flowers. I didn't stock a rose in the flower shop for probably the first 4 years. As soon as I could then just garden again, I did. But, business grew, and pretty soon you're doing weddings and all kinds of things. And then I learned something. I had a prejudice against a rose. And one day I looked at the roses that I had been working with now for years and the beauty of them. And I thought, what a stupid thing that was. Like people will say to me, I don't want carnations in it. And I understand that they don't want something common, but I can knock it out of the park with whatever the item is. And so I'm trying now to not hold its commonness against it, let's say.
That's a good point, because after I asked the question, of course, you have a year-round business, and of course, we do not grow flowers outdoors all year round in Minnesota and North Dakota. So naturally, for some of those things, you would need to buy those from warmer areas that do produce them all year long.
But we do have CSAs, so we sell a bunch of CSAs, which is community-supported agriculture, and you pay for 12 or 16 weeks of flowers that you get once a week, and that all comes from the garden or the prairie.
Well, you do that through Prairie Petals, that you have your own CSA, and yes. So members there can they I suppose they come in and they collect their
once a week.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's really fascinating. I should sign up for that next summer. Yeah. Like we get into, again, like this time of the year, fall, I tend to think of a lot of dried things. One of the big ones is bittersweet. And bittersweet is interesting because people, it seems like they'll go into the wild and they'll have their own patch and they will not tell you what it is. It's like a fishing hole. People are protective. Do you grow bittersweet or do you forage it?
I have my own fishing hole.
And you're not going to tell us.
Well, no.
No, of course not.
Because I bought bittersweet from you before, and they've been huge, great, wild.
Well, the thing about it is I found I didn't have enough time to go fishing.
Yeah.
So I have somebody else who has a fishing hole now.
Okay. Somebody who knows it, and you can, that's good.
Yep.
That's good. What are there any other things that you go out and forage in the wild?
Yes. My original email address was ditch picker. I got into the flower business because I agreed to grow flowers for someone. And then because it didn't seem like I had an adequate number of flowers, I continued to not deliver them to her. And then she got after me and I had a deadline. So I said, okay, I will go by this day. And then in a panic, I thought I still don't have very many things because I was thinking of it as a job and, volume and buckets. So I'm turning down my road and I decide, there are green things in vases for flowers. Let's see if there's anything green in the ditch I can get out of here, because I was driving down my driveway. And sure, I was like, that's a flower. Oh my God, that's a flower. And there was another flower, and that was all she wrote. That was all she wrote. I went straight back to the house. I filled buckets and I drove the ditches around all my farmland, and I was astounded. And then, so I don't know. So foraging, but then I did learn after about 6 years of it that you're not supposed to do that. So I don't do that now anymore. But that's okay because I have my own massive place to do it. So it's okay.
Your own kind of, it's like, I suppose it's like a, what do they call it when you hunt, staked land or something like that? Where
That's exactly it.
You got the okay to,
that's it.
And that it's that habitat is for that. And it's, yeah, that's a great thing to know.
Yeah. So like if I want to go out and pick twig trees, I'm just taking them off. They came up scrub in the middle of my prairie.
Yep.
So I'm actually going twig tree picking this weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you look for in a twig tree?
Oh, it depends upon where it's going to go.
Okay.
But there are some. So I also have hunting land. So I went up hunting, and then I hadn't been up there a little while, and so I hadn't picked twig trees from there in a while. And wow, we're hunting. There's a twig tree. So it depends upon a lovely shape that's kind of flat is good because it's easy for a person to get against a wall.
Okay. Yep.
But like, for instance, I have talked Tim from Youngblood into considering a twig tree in Youngblood, and I have the twig tree in mind, and it's a beautiful top, and it's not very thin branchy, more structured branchy, and it's not about ladling it down. It's about just artfully hanging a few things from it. And I'm going to do some twigs in his window.
So that was one of the, I think, like you talked earlier about doing some dried arrangements at the Hotel Donaldson. And I think one of the times early on when I met you, so this is probably about 20 plus years ago, 20 years ago, I guess, at the Hodo. But you had done these kind of trees in lieu of kind of Christmas trees. You'd done these trees that were basically twig trees, and they were stuck into, you'd taken a log and sawed it in half, right down the middle. So it laid flat on one side, rounded on the top, still had the bark on. You drilled holes, and you would put 2 or 3 twig trees in there, and then you lit them up and they were outside, and it was just beautiful, and it was great, and it was unique, and it was what the Hodo was about. You know, they liked that freedom of expression and the tie to the land and to the area. And that was really just spectacular. And I thought that those were, people will probably remember those because no one does arrangements like that anymore, or at least you don't see things like that anymore. And that was really, those were really kind of great things.
Yes, it sort of came about by necessity. So I hadn't planned on doing flowers for a hotel. I'd planned on having a garden for the hotel, and I'm like 300 tomato plants. And so I'm turning, like, suddenly I'm into the flowers, because immediately when I delivered those to the Hodo, I was immediately successful, shockingly so. And they said 5 days later, can you do it again? Only we need more. So that's how I sort of fell into it. So here I've got all my own flowers, but here comes the fall. And I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And the whole idea of even going to a commercial place to buy any was not even possible for me. So I was out catfishing on my bank, and I'm like, hey, that's a pretty nice looking plant right there. What? And nice color and structure. And I touched it. I thought, wow, that's actually kind of dry. So I took a big copper cauldron I had, and I filled it with a number of different dried textural things, and it was stunning. And I headed upstairs in the Hodo for this big thing that they were just having. And the person who was running it at the time called me out, and he took me outside, and he said, who ordered you to do that? Well, I said, I thought I had kind of freedom to do what I wanted to do. And he said, what does that cost right there? I said, I don't really, not much. I just picked it from the bank, put it in that thing. I'm good. And it was out of necessity. And so here comes Christmas.
Yep.
So I made dried ornaments to hang on twig trees in each of the rooms and did the thing you're talking about.
Yep.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, you said you're going to go out this weekend, pick twig trees. How late through the year are you picking? What through the 12 months? No, I'm going out to. They don't have leaves right now. Okay,
so I don't pick them during the summer unless I have to have them, because of course you have to take all the leaves off then. So and I can't pick them deep into the year because it's in a mature prairie up there, back across a field into the corner of the Red River. And so my window of picking opportunity.
Yeah, this time of year is just a little easier to spot things, isn't it? When they don't have leaves on, it seems like it's just kind of a little easier to find things.
So until the snow shuts me out.
Yeah, I was just wondering, but in general, other things too. Are you? It's until the snow.
I'm picking like. I have gone out in the prairie in the snow and taken the pods off of up across because that's what I needed.
By necessity again.
Yep. Probably in February.
Snowshoes? Cross-country skis?
I did not.
I can picture you out trying to get through snowdrift, trying to collect what you need.
Yeah.
You said that you started off thinking that you would be growing vegetables
right.
For how many vegetables do you grow now? You said 300 tomato plants is what you started with at that time, thinking that you would do for a restaurant. How much do you grow now?
Right now, in the last 2 or 3 years, very little, because I have turned to the other thing. I'm spending a lot of time at the flower shop and not a lot of time canning tomatoes. So it's just due for probably the last 3 years, but I am fully a vegetable gardener.
You talked about some of these projects that you were doing for the Hodo, and I'm just kind of wondering, to me, those seemed like big projects.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest project you've ever done with a dried arrangement type project?
They were putting up the Roco parking ramp behind the shop after I'd moved into the Loretta, and
so between Broadway and Robert Street in downtown.
Right.
Yep.
And they were pouring concrete at that time, and then I got a call that they had a bunch of tenants moving into the Wilson,
one of the new apartments,
apartment complexes, and it looked atrocious in the courtyard. It was a mess in the courtyard, and they just said, "What can you do? Can you do something? Because it's February. Or it's late in the year." So, yeah, I can, because I have a prairie, and I have flame willow trees and yellow willow trees and dogwood and trees and all kinds of things. And so I went to the person who was in charge of pouring the concrete, and I said, if I build some forms, can you pour some concrete in them for me? And he said, what are you looking for? And I said, I probably just need 4. And he said, okay. So I'm in the alley, and I'm building my forms, and then I have to put holdouts in them to put the trees in, which were large PVC pipes. And then when I was ready, I took them over to when they filled them up with concrete, and I put 20-foot, 24-foot trees, bushes, shrubs across the courtyard in these big concrete 800-pound things. And then I had to fill in another spot, and so I went and got a whole bunch of concrete form stakes, which are steel rods that have holes in them, and I peppered that whole area. And then I went out to the prairie, and I picked willow trees, and I just screwed them to all of them, so it was an instant forest, and I put lights on them.
Wow. What was the height of some of those?
Like 25 feet.
25 feet. Yeah. Wow.
Easily. Big trees.
So you
trees with the diameters of like 8 inches.
a miniature dormant type forest in that area.
Yeah.
Immediately. Wow.
You were not kidding when you said that you call it when you were an engineer.
I am. It is. You give me a problem to solve, and I can think of how to do it. Yeah.
How long did that stay in place?
Until the spring came. And they got to grade it and take it. Yeah.
Sure, that's interesting. In your discussion of finding things like on the prairie, and I always think of during the dormant season the beauty of the grasses. The ornamental grasses, the native grasses. Do you use many of them in your work?
Many.
Yeah, and such as, do you use the leaves or the dried seed heads or combination? Everything, sure.
Mostly we pick the grass for its seed head, but some grasses have great structure coming at the bottom, and then we just cut the head off the top and we use the bottom.
Sure. It's so fun. There are so many native type grasses that are beautiful, and there are cultivars of the native grasses that we all plant in our landscapes. So it's fun for people to be enjoying those more.
It is.
Now.
It is.
Do you see more of an appreciation for dried flowers and things like that? Natural arrangements, natural indigenous flowers maybe too from our area?
Well, I had no experience with flowers at all.
Okay.
So when I opened the flower shop in 2010 and I started having people come in and doing weddings and things like that, you're just sort of going, oh, I'm going to turn a corner and do something different over here. And then at that time, everything was silver. rustic, burlap, blue ball jars, a big long stretch of that. And then somebody called me and said, yeah, it's gold. I need gold. I said, what do you mean gold? They said they're going to be beautiful floor-length tablecloths, gold, shimmering gold. I want gold. And I didn't follow any of the information. It was just like, gold? You've got to be kidding me. And then somebody said, yeah, didn't you know gold was in? So I would be finding it at the time. It would be coming in because people would be saying, I want you to do this. And that's what happened. But got to remember, I've been drying flowers forever. So my ceiling is covered with dried flowers. It has been since the time I moved in there. I use them. It's on my website. You can get dried flowers. And then came the bride who said, oh, geez, I don't know. Will you make me a dried bouquet? Oh, I threw my arms up in the air, my fists, and I said, yes, I can't believe it. It's finally here. There you go.
To do a dried bouquet.
And so many of them we have done. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you mind? Let's take another break. When we come back, let's talk about tips for drying flowers.
Oh, and a couple for fresh. So you should have a pen and paper.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back with Kimberly Hess from Prairie Petals, and we've been talking about this. You do a lot of different kinds of arrangements, but one thing that you're particularly known for is dried flowers.
Yes.
And I had to ask, what are some tips for people that maybe even want to dry their own flowers, and then also like how to arrange dried flowers?
Okay, so the first thing is, if you want dried flowers to last and be good, you have to dry them in great condition. It's not about letting your roses start to fall over with their heads in the vase and then thinking then you're going to dry them and have something. So it's about drying them in great condition, not drying them tightly together so that there's plenty of air. Put them in a place that is airy, but there is not air blowing on it because you want it to uniformly dry out, not dry out just on the outside and then seal in the inside moisture. Out of the sunlight, because the sunlight changes them all. Never, ever spray hairspray on them.
That was one of my questions, because that used to be the old thing, spraying it with hairspray.
Well, the thing, people did that because they were using the hairspray as a glue to hold the petals on.
Sure.
Which means that you let the flower get too far to want to die first. Okay, so the petals are wanting to fall out. Okay, second of all, it's sticky, and so the dust sticks to it. But mostly it coats the outside with a shellac that is sticky and dusty, eventually sealing in all the moisture to the inside. So if you want your rose to really turn an ugly color, you'd put some hairspray on it first.
That sounds great. Now, when a person does this drying of some of these, do you hang them upside down, or what do you recommend? If
you dry them by hanging them, you're going to hang them upside down for 3 weeks. Not less than 3 weeks, not a single day less than 3 weeks. Because even though they'll appear dry on the outside, when you turn them up right, eventually they'll start to sag and you need them to stay upright. Okay. So you can dry them in also silica gel by buying it on Amazon and in 1,000 different places and burying the bloom in the silica gel. And that is the most perfect reproduction of the fresh that you can get in drying outside of freeze drying, which is just not really available. And then we do a whole lot of glycerin drying by encouraging the flower or the greens, a lot of greens, like we're about to do a lot of Port Orford cedar, and it will be green or blue because we're going to dye some blue and supple indefinitely for 10 years. We make a mixture that includes glycerin and citric acid and other things, and we encourage it to drink it, and then we dry it, and that is supple. And so it is so incredible that you could take your hands on a hydrangea that has been treated that way and literally squeeze that head and it will not shed a single petal.
And so you cut off the whatever it is you want to dry, and you put the lower stems down in that glycerin solution so that they can drink it up and absorb it.
Some drink it faster than others. Some take about 8 or 10 days. Some of it will drink what you need it to drink. It kind of depends upon the size of the stem, etc. Yeah, and then you hang that upside down and let the moisture dry out of it, and it is indefinitely supple.
So you mentioned the cedar. Was that one of them? The
Port Orford cedar, yes.
The evergreen cedar, both maybe juniper or arborvitae type cedars?
Yes. Yep. Sure. That's it.
And so the glycerin works well for that. That's interesting.
And hydrangeas and many, many things, grasses, many things. So we dry in all those ways. Yep.
And we should say too, you talked earlier about, you have things hanging from the not the roof, but above you've got grids and things like up there. And it is kind of like, in a way, like if you think of like an old school European butcher shop with various cuts and things hanging from the ceiling. Like this is it with flowers and plants.
Yes.
And it's fantastic. You walk in there and your eye doesn't know where to go because there's things up and there's things below and there's a number of different things going on there. I've heard that you've got, tell me about the flower bar.
Oh, the flower bar is awesome. So I needed a big long table. And so over a weekend, I got some chains and I manufactured myself a double-decker full long shelf that runs from one end of this flower shop to the other in the front. And it is covered with buckets of flowers of all different kinds that you can just walk in and take. It's like asking a florist, can I walk into the back cooler and say, yes, you can. In fact, it's all right here. It turns over quickly. The flowers are extraordinarily fresh. We give everybody a lecture at the checkout. And if they've heard the lecture already, they start to scowl at me. And I say, okay, you've heard the lecture. They say, yes. I say, okay. About how to make them last as long as possible. So flowers die. Get a pen and paper. This is that moment. Flowers die mostly in the vase due to bacteria growth in the vase. So the bacteria is growing on the stems and on the foliage, which is a no-no. So you should have no foliage below the water line. If you get flowers and somebody's given them to you and the florist has left that there, because most of them do, you want to peel that out of there immediately. Okay? Flowers want an acidified water. 3.75 to 4.25 on the pH scale, and it's coming out of the tap at about 7.5. You need to encourage them to drink. So you give it acidified water with vinegar. Okay. And then
what kind of vinegar?
White vinegar.
Okay.
Any vinegar that doesn't have a lot of little particles in it.
Okay.
So it's all vinegar that's sold commercially is 5% vinegar. So, if you had
So like a proportion, how much vinegar to like a quart of water or something?
It's about 2 teaspoons to a quart of water. So it's on the back of our business card. So the thing you want to do is when you change the water, wash out the vase because that's where the bacteria is growing. Okay. Trim off the stems every now and then. Spray the stems off in the sink because if you went mud bogging before you hopped into the swimming pool, you'd have a shower, and it's the same thing. You pull them out of a bacteria bath.
Wash the bacteria off the stems that might be forming.
That's it.
So then, as soon as a person brought flowers home, do you advocate recutting that stem?
No, not from my flower shop. From any other flower shop, I'll say yes, because we don't have things that we just got arranged that we're just saying, okay, somebody bought that dozen roses, get that out. That just didn't happen. So we have arranged it. We have cut it just before you got it.
Awesome.
But you can tell if you look at the bottom of the stems how long it's been since they were cut. So I will say that regularly our flowers are lasting 3 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Do you have things that are, like you say, it's always changing now, and I'm just wondering with the change in seasons now, what are the things that people will be seeing more of in your shop over the next month or so?
Wow, I'm going to have twig trees for sale for Christmas and for the season. And luckily it doesn't end at Christmas because it looks like winter decor is what it looks like.
Okay.
A whole lot of greens that are permanent. We're making a good go of our front window, which we haven't paid a lot of attention to in the past, but we're going to do it up this year. So we're going to hang big, round, dried flower ornaments from some large arching trees in the window.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun. We're going to have to go out and check that out.
Thank you.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that I heard you did a really unique floral arrangement for John Wheeler's retirement. When WDAY, friend of the show, John Wheeler retired as meteorologist, you did something pretty special for his retirement.
Yes, we did. Someone asked us if we could do the arrangements for his retirement, and I said, sure. And they said, but trouble is, in the middle of this table is going to be the rain gauge. And I was like, well, bring me a rain gauge. Bring me a rain gauge. So they brought me a rain gauge, and while she was standing there, I started doing a little something into it. I thought, well, no. And I give it a little thought. Oh, he's a weather forecaster. So we built the 4 seasons of the year down into the rain gauges that were the centerpieces on the table. So they were fall, spring, summer, winter.
Can you give us representations for what were some of the things in each?
Winter was white. Okay. So we had like little white dried ruscus in there and small white button mums and probably some, I can't remember the items, but it was about aiming for that one to be especially white.
Okay.
Yep. And then, fall is easier. I think we probably had tulips in the spring. We had really green, bright, happy things. You could look at each one and say, yep, that's summer. That's winter.
I think it's probably safe to say that may have been the only time before and since that floral design has been done in a rain gauge. That's awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah, that was fun. So that's what I mean is that we like to just think it up and solve a problem. A problem is something to think up. It's not necessarily something negative. It's something to solve. So that's what we like to do. Solve a floral idea need.
Well, Kimberly, it's been great to have you in here. It's fun to hear more about Prairie Petals and what you guys do there.
Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for the tips also for drying flowers, keeping things lasting longer. I really appreciate those tips.
Thank you very much.
All right. And Don, if people have questions for you again, what's the best way to reach you?
Send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu. And again, thank you, Kimberly. This has been a great discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
And thanks, everyone, for listening.